Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namassami. I think this is okay, thanks. Yeah, this will work. So, continuing on the retreat readings, general category of happiness. Just also wanted to acknowledge the fact that we're kind of starting with some fairly hard-hitting stuff around the we call the dangers or the difficulties of attachment to sensory, sense desire, pleasurable forms of sensory experience. And the Buddha doesn't mince words. Got some very strong analogies yesterday from Ajahn Panyo's reading. And just wanting to, for a retreat centered around happiness, some people may be wondering, well, is there anything good that can uplift the mind? And there's a whole lot more of that to come, I think. But just setting the stage for the disadvantages of happiness based solely on craving for sensuality. And there's also, just to let people know, there's going to be some discussion later on, not too far from now, at least in Prabhupada's book here, that will be talking about how to engage with sensory experience that is pleasurable. We can't avoid that. We've got these six senses and we're human beings, and so we're exposed to both pleasant and unpleasant feeling. But how to engage with pleasant sense feeling experience without moving into craving and clinging around it. So some of those aspects will be considered later too. But in the meantime, we've got at least one more very strong teaching from the Buddha. It's actually one of my favorites. It's a continuation of the Magandiya Sutta that Ajahn read some, at least from Dhamma, from the book here, Buddha Dhamma, and then I'll continue from the sutta itself. So just to read one paragraph from Buddha Dhamma, where we left off yesterday. Those who discern the aforementioned disadvantages and dangers of sense desire, kama, and who have experienced a superior kind of happiness to the point of no longer hankering after objects of sensual enjoyment, also see into the true nature of sense pleasure, kama sukha. The Buddha explained this matter by using another analogy as follows. And, Prabhupada does a summary of the rest of the Magandiya Sutta, but I thought it would be nice to go ahead and read it directly. It's very, very potent imagery here. So continuing on, and this is Sutta 75 in the Majjhima Nikaya, and starting at paragraph 12. So too Magandiya, formerly when I lived the home life, I enjoyed myself provided and endowed with the 5 chords of sensual pleasure, with forms cognizable by the eye, with tangibles cognizable by the body that are wished for, desired, agreeable, and likable, connected with sensual desire and provocative of lust. On a later occasion, having understood as they actually are, the gratification, the danger, and the escape in the case of sensual pleasures, I abandoned craving for sensual pleasures. I removed fever for sensual pleasures, and I abide without thirst, with the mind inwardly at peace. I see other beings who are not free from lust for sensual pleasures, being devoured by craving for sensual pleasures, burning with fever for sensual pleasures, indulging in sensual pleasures, and I do not envy them, nor do I delight therein. Why is that? Because there is, Magandiya, a delight apart from sensual pleasures, apart from unwholesome states, which surpasses even divine bliss. Since I take delight in that, I do not envy what is inferior, nor do I delight therein. Suppose, Magandiya, there was a leper with sores and blisters on his arms, being devoured by worms, scratching the scabs off the openings of his wounds with his nails, cauterizing his body over a burning charcoal pit. Then his friends and companions, his kinsmen and relatives, would bring a physician to treat him. The physician would make medicine for him, and by means of that medicine, the man would be cured of his leprosy and would become well and happy, independent, master of himself, able to go where he likes. Then he might see another leper with sores and blisters on his limbs, being devoured by worms, scratching the scabs off the openings of his wounds with his nails, cauterizing his body over a burning charcoal pit. What do you think, Magandiya? Would that man envy that leper for his burning charcoal pit or his use of medicine? No, Master Gotama. Why is that? Because when there is sickness, there is a need for medicine, and when there is no sickness, there is no need for medicine. Suppose, Magandiya, there was a leper with sores and blisters on his limbs, being devoured by worms, scratching the scabs off the openings of his wounds with his nails, cauterizing his body over a burning charcoal pit. Then his friends and companions, his kinsmen and relatives, brought a physician to treat him. The physician would make medicine for him, and by means of that medicine the man would be cured of his leprosy and would become well and happy, independent, master of himself, able to go where he likes. Then 2 strong men would seize him by both arms and drag him towards a burning charcoal pit. What do you think, Magandiya? Would that man twist his body this way and that? Yes, Master Gotama. Why is that? Because that fire is indeed painful to touch, hot and scorching. What do you think, Magandiya? Is it only now that fire is painful to touch, hot and scorching? Or previously, too, was that fire painful to touch, hot and scorching? Master Gotama, that fire is now painful to touch, hot and scorching, and previously, too, that fire was painful to touch, hot and scorching. For when that man was a leper, with sores and blisters on his limbs, being devoured by worms, scratching the scabs off the openings of his wounds with his nails, his faculties were impaired. Thus, though the fire was actually painful to touch, he acquired a mistaken perception of it as pleasant. So too, Magandiya, in the past, sensual pleasures were painful to touch, hot and scorching. In the future, sensual pleasures will be painful to touch, hot and scorching. And now at present, sensual pleasures are painful to touch, hot and scorching. But these beings who are not free from lust for sensual pleasures, who are devoured by craving for sensual pleasures, who burn with fever for sensual pleasures, have faculties that are impaired. Thus, though sensual pleasures are actually painful to touch, they acquire a mistaken perception of them as pleasant. There's a footnote. The expression viparita sanya alludes to the, quote, perverted perception, and then parentheses, sanya vipalasa, of perceiving pleasure in what is really painful. Suppose, Magandiya, there was a leper with sores and blisters on his limbs, being devoured by worms, scratching the scabs off the openings of his wounds with his nails, cauterizing his body over a burning charcoal pit. The more he scratches the scabs and cauterizes his body, the fouler, more evil-smelling, and more infected the openings of the wounds would become. Yet he would find a certain measure of satisfaction and enjoyment in scratching the openings of his wounds. So too, Magandiya, beings who are not free from lust for sensual pleasures, who are devoured by craving for sensual pleasures, who burn with fever for sensual pleasures, still indulge in sensual pleasures. The more such beings indulge in sensual pleasures, the more their craving for sensual pleasures increases, and the more they are burned by their fever for sensual pleasures. Yet they find a certain measure of satisfaction and enjoyment in dependence on the 5 chords of sensual pleasure. What do you think, Magandiya? Have you ever seen or heard of a king or a king's minister enjoying himself, provided and endowed with the 5 chords of sensual pleasure, who, without abandoning craving for sensual pleasures, without removing fever for sensual pleasures, was able to abide free from thirst, with the mind inwardly at peace, or who is able or who will be able to do so abide? No, Master Gotama. Good Magandiya, I too have never seen or heard of a king or a king's minister enjoying himself, provided and endowed with the 5 chords of sensual pleasure, who, without abandoning craving for sensual pleasures, without removing fever for sensual pleasures, was able to abide free from thirst, with a mind inwardly at peace, or who is able or who will be able to so abide. On the contrary, Magandiya, those recluses or Brahmins who abided or abide or will abide free from thirst, with the mind inwardly at peace, all do so after having understood as they are actually the origin, the disappearance, the gratification, the danger, and the escape in the case of sensual pleasures. And it is after abandoning craving for sensual pleasures and removing fever from sensual pleasures that they abided or abide or will abide free from thirst, with a mind inwardly at peace. Then at that point, the Blessed One uttered this exclamation: "The greatest of all gains is health. Nibbana is the greatest bliss. The Eightfold Path is the best of paths, for it leads safely to the deathless." When this was said, the wanderer Magandiya said to the Blessed One, "It is wonderful, Master Gotama. It is marvelous how well that has been expressed by Master Gotama. The greatest of all gains is health. Nibbana is the greatest bliss." We too have heard earlier wanderers who were teachers and teachers of teachers saying this, and it agrees, Master Gotama. But Magandiya, when you heard earlier wanderers who were teachers and teachers of teachers saying this, what is that health? What is that Nibbana? When this was said, the wanderer Magandiya rubbed his own limbs with his hands and said, "This is that health, Master Gotama. This is that Nibbana. For I am now healthy and happy, and nothing afflicts me." Footnote here. Magandiya evidently understands the verse in line with the 58th wrong view of the Brahmajala Sutta. Quote, "When this self, furnished and supplied with the 5 strands of sense pleasures, revels in them, at this point the self attains supreme nibbana here and now." So that's the wrong view that Magandiya is engaging in and quoting to the Buddha. Magandiya, suppose that there was a man born blind who could not see dark and light forms, who could not see blue, yellow, red, or pink forms, who could not see what was even and uneven, who could not see the stars or the sun and the moon. He might hear a man with good eyesight saying, "Good indeed, sirs, is a white cloth, beautiful, spotless, and clean," and he would go in search of a white cloth. Then a man would cheat him with a dirty soiled garment thus: "Good man, here is a white cloth for you, beautiful, spotless, and clean." And he would accept it and put it on. And being satisfied with it, he would utter words of satisfaction thus: "Good indeed, sirs, is a white cloth, beautiful, spotless, and clean." What do you think, Magandiya, when that man born blind accepted that dirty soiled garment, put it on, and being satisfied with it, uttered words of satisfaction, thus, "Good indeed, sirs, is a white cloth, beautiful, spotless, and clean." Did he do so knowing and seeing, or out of faith in the man with good eyesight? Venerable sir, he would have done so unknowing and unseeing, out of faith in the man with good eyesight. So too, Magandiya, the wanderers of other sects are blind and visionless. They do not know health. They do not see nibbana. Yet they utter this stanza thus: "The greatest of all gains is health. Nibbana is the greatest bliss." This stanza was uttered by the earlier accomplished ones, fully enlightened ones, thus: "The greatest of all gains is health. Nibbana is the greatest bliss. The eightfold path is the best of paths, for it leads to safety, to the deathless." Now it has gradually become current among ordinary people. And the footnote on that is from the commentaries. The full verse, which is including the last two lines about the eightfold path, is the best of paths, for it leads to safety, to the deathless. That full verse has been recited by the previous Buddhas seated in the midst of their fourfold assemblies. The multitude learned it as, quote, "a verse concerned with the good." After the last Buddha passed away, it spread among the wanderers who were able to preserve only the first two lines in their books. And although this body, Magandiya, is a disease, a tumor, a dart, a calamity, and an affliction, referring to this body, you say, "This is that health, Master Gotama. This is that nibbana." You do not have that noble vision, Magandiya, by means of which you might know health and see nibbana. I have confidence in Master Gotama. Thus, Master Gotama is capable of teaching me the Dhamma in such a way that I can come to know health and to see nibbana. Magandiya, suppose there was a man born blind who could not see dark and light forms, or the sun and moon. Then his friends and companions, his kinsmen and relatives, would bring a physician to treat him. The physician would make a medicine for him, yet by means of that medicine, the man's vision would not arise or be purified. What do you think, Magandiya? Would that doctor reap weariness and disappointment? Yes, Master Gotama. So too, Magandiya, if I were to teach you the Dhamma thus, "This is that health, this is that nibbana," you might not know health or see nibbana, and that would be wearisome and troublesome for me. I have confidence in Master Gotama. Master Gotama is capable of teaching me the Dhamma in such a way that I can come to know health and to see nibbana. Magandiya, suppose there was a man born blind who could not see dark and light forms or the sun and moon. He might hear a man with good eyesight saying, "Good indeed, sirs, is a white cloth, beautiful, spotless, and clean." And he would go in search of a white cloth. Then a man would cheat him with a dirty soiled garment. "Good man, here is a white cloth for you, beautiful, spotless, and clean." And he would accept it and put it on. Then his friends and companions, his kinsmen and relatives, would bring a physician to treat him. The physician would make medicine, emetics and purgatives, ointments and counter-ointments and nasal treatment. And by means of that medicine, the man's vision would arise and be purified. Together with the arising of his vision, his desire and liking for that dirty, soiled garment would be abandoned. Then he might burn with indignation and enmity towards that man and might think that he ought to be killed thus: "Indeed, I have long been tricked, cheated, and defrauded by this man with this dirty, soiled garment when he told me, 'Good man, here is a white cloth for you, beautiful, spotless, and clean.'" So too, Magandiya, if I were to teach you the Dhamma thus, "This is that health, this is that nibbana," you might know health and see nibbana. Together with the arising of your vision, your desire, and lust for the sensual, or for the five aggregates affected by clinging might be abandoned. Then perhaps you might think, "Indeed, I have long been tricked, cheated, and defrauded by this mind. For when clinging, I have been clinging just to material form. I have been clinging just to feeling. I have been clinging just to perception. I have been clinging just to formations. I have been clinging just to consciousness. With my clinging as condition, being or becoming comes to be. With being or becoming as condition, birth. With birth as condition, aging and death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair come to be. Such is the origin of this whole mass of suffering. I have confidence in Master Gotama thus. Master Gotama is capable of teaching me the Dhamma in such a way that I might rise up from this seat, cured of my blindness. Then Magandiya, associate with true men. When you associate with true men, you will hear the true Dhamma. When you hear the true Dhamma, you will practice in accordance with the true Dhamma. When you practice in accordance with the true Dhamma, you will know and see for yourself thus. These are diseases, tumors, and darts. But here these diseases, tumors, and darts cease without remainder. With the cessation of my clinging comes cessation of being. With the cessation of being, cessation of birth. With the cessation of birth, aging and death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair cease. Such is the cessation of this whole mass of suffering. When this was said, the wanderer Magandiya said, "Magnificent Master Gotama, magnificent Master Gotama. Master Gotama has made the Dhamma clear in many ways, as though he were turning upright what had been overthrown, revealing what was hidden, showing the way to one who was lost, or holding up a lamp in the dark for those with eyesight to see forms. I go to Master Gotama for refuge, and to the Dhamma and to the Sangha of bhikkhus. I would receive the going forth under Master Gotama. I would receive the full admission. Magandiya, one who formerly belonged to another sect and desires the going forth and the full admission in this Dhamma and discipline, lives on probation for 4 months. At the end of 4 months, if the bhikkhus are satisfied with him, they give him the going forth and the full admission to the bhikkhu state. But I recognize individual differences in this matter. Venerable Sir, if those who formerly belong to another sect and desire the going forth and the full admission in this Dhamma and discipline live on probation for 4 months, and if at the end of the 4 months the bhikkhus being satisfied with them give them the going forth and the full admission, then I will live on probation for 4 years. At the end of 4 years, if the bhikkhus are satisfied with me, let them give me the going forth and the full admission to the bhikkhu's state." Then the wanderer Magandiya received the going forth under the Blessed One, and he received the full admission. And soon, not long after his full admission, dwelling alone, withdrawn, diligent, ardent, and resolute, the Venerable Magandiya, by realizing for himself with direct knowledge, here and now, entered upon and abided in that supreme goal of the holy life, for the sake of which clansmen rightly go forth from the home life into homelessness. He directly knew, birth is destroyed, the holy life has been lived, what had to be done has been done. There is no more coming to any state of being. And the Venerable Magandiya became one of the Arahants. So just a couple of paragraphs from Buddha Dhamma to sum that up. When those people marred by craving for sensuality experience sense pleasure, their craving intensifies. Moreover, their happiness and delight is derived from and limited to the 5 objects of sense pleasure. If they are still not cured from the infection and inflammation of craving for sensuality, it will not be possible for them to know a superior, more refined kind of happiness. In this agitated state, how can one get them to experience an internal happiness independent of external sense objects? But when craving for sensuality no longer gnaws away at them, and they are freed from the provocations of sense desire, they will be able to experience a sublime internal happiness. This is referred to as a freedom from disease, an absence of mental disturbance, or perfect mental health, which is one of the definitions for Nibbana. So, very powerful teachings, potent to help us open our eyes, but also very uplifting in terms of it leading to that completely unconditioned sense of happiness that we can attain. So, are there any comments, questions?
I don't know the fact, but it seems there are some lay people, or maybe former monks, that develop their meditation very high degree, develop samadhi, jhana, and they seem, it's unclear, but they seem also sometimes happy to, like a better words, indulge in sense pleasures as well after the fact. Maybe I'm mistaken by that observation, but I was wondering if you had any comments or your own observations. I think that meditators.
No? I mean, I don't know.
Maybe, I mean, in the past, for many years, I misunderstood it. Maybe I misunderstand it now, but it's often referred to like, the peace or the bliss of detachment being superior to sense pleasures, or referred to as Brahma bliss. And I felt that was a sense of amplitude, like it was greater. But it more seems to me that it's just a steadiness and an ease. And I wonder if that's correct and true, and it's just the stability, and maybe it comes from the lack of movement of the mind that this feeling comes from. And so I felt like maybe in the past the greater was misunderstood. Is this the greater? That it's not necessarily in terms of like, because you have in terms of the jhana description as well, of going to equanimity. You're going to, so I don't know if you could say anything about that.
Yeah, but I think that's very much the case in that one is you're reassessing and redefining, recognizing what is actually more satisfying and more gratifying, and that has much more subtlety to it, and that's and it's not that people don't experience pleasure, but it's also experienced in a very different way, and also the kind of enjoyment and ability to delight, as well as those aspects of like compassion and mudita are amplified with less need for or less searching for sensual gratification. So that there's a whole different reordering of the what one recognizes and experiences as pleasurable.
Back to Tanjagara's question, Buddha does talk about that in some of the up and coming readings about people in the suttas who had prowess in meditation and then fall away and go back to sense pleasures with up and coming readings. It does come up in the suttas.
Well, it's kind of what my question too is, because I think there's a lack of discernment as to that this is the better, because it's not, because it's subtler, one doesn't necessarily initially recognize the superiority of it in it, and then and sometimes you need to be reminded, and you go indulge in some kind of sensuality and recognize that causes more instability in the mind, a seeking mind, and that mind that's constantly seeking can't experience that. Slow burn.
That's very much the case in terms of the what one, because also what is what we're so used to is that mind of seeking, and it's hard to when you measure everything from that place, then things that are of a subtle nature tend to not be, don't even get on the screen, they won't get measured.
Yeah, the other thought that came to my mind when you were asking the question, Tenchak, was that, and I don't know any specific monks particularly that this applies to, but just theoretically that, one could experience some of the benefits and pleasures of the subtle forms of, in meditation, and really know that and experience that, but still not see the dangers of the sensual pleasures that they maybe haven't explored. It's kind of, Karuṇadhammo was saying they haven't, got the discernment. They haven't explored the dangers and the impermanence and the transience to a full enough extent to really understand the danger in reverting back to just depending on sensual pleasure.